So a few weeks back, I got a fragrance decant sent to me by one of my moderators, Newt. So thank you to Newt. And it is by Penhaligons. It's HALFETI Cedar. And I talked to you guys about it on a live stream, but I was waiting to wear it a few times before I did an actual review on it. And in the meantime, another one of my subscribers, D Holmes, again, thank you to D Holmes, he sent me another one by Penhaligons. It is HalfETI Leather. I talked about it on my live stream. I wore it again yesterday. And so now we're going to talk about the differences, the similarities, which one I like better of Penhaligons HALFETI Cedar and HalfETI Leather. HalfETI Cedar came out last year. I'm not sure when Leather came out. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. So without further ado, let's get it. What's going on, my great smelling dudes? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Randy, aka FragranceDoud. Thank you guys so much for joining me for yet another dual review where we're going to be talking about two fragrances from the same house that have been getting a lot of hype lately. One of them more so than the other one because I believe that the Cedar was released last year. I'm not sure when Leather was released. But with that said, we're talking about Penhaligons HALFETI Cedar and HalfETI Leather. Before we get into it, if you could, we're on a train to 10,000 subscribers. Hashtag 10,000. I really appreciate you guys. We're going to be doing some giveaways and all that on the way. But we just hit 7,000 about a week ago. So if you could show your brother a subscribe, if you're not already, hit that like, put me on the algorithm, comment below. Let me know if you've tried either of these, what your thoughts on them. I'm really interested. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say about these. Because I'm not the biggest fan of like super masculine fragrances. I like the ones that are masculine, obviously. I'm not like super unisex. I don't like those either. I just, when it comes to like the, let's just say the Jensen style fragrances that are like super heavy on the leather or super heavy on the spice or the woods, or they're not as mass appealing. And I'm still a mass appeal kind of guy because I mean, I'm not like the biggest niche person or anything like that. And so getting into some of these fragrances I've been getting into lately, it's been quite a journey for me. And so I'm happy to do that. And I'm happy that you guys are here along for the ride. Even though some of them might be annoying if I hate them or whatever. But I just sprayed HalfETI Cedar on my left hand and HalfETI Leather is on my right hand. I have worn both of them 4+ times now, so I can give you the information. What I do is some days, if I don't want to wear them as my scent of the day, I will wear it sprayed on my hand and just wear it that way. But HalfETI Cedar, I got in from Newt, so thank you to Newt and to D Holmes who sent me HalfETI Leather. So I guess we're going to just start out here with HalfETI Cedar. So again, this was getting a lot of hype, and I do want to give a little bit of an advisory. With HalfETI Leather, it's fine. You can spray it tester or skin. They smell the same. HalfETI Cedar, though, HalfETI Leather is fine, but HalfETI Cedar, if you spray that on a tester, I remember I did that on my live stream because I was spraying like 10 different fragrances. It smells like butt for like the first like 5 minutes. And so I didn't like it as much during that live stream because it smelled very fecal and animalic in the opening. And that's on tester. It does not do that on skin. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So with that said, HalfETI Cedar, I came back to Newt and I was like, man, this is actually quite fire. I'm sorry that I dissed your fragrance that you love so much, but I also want to give another advisory. This is not going to be for the everyday average Joe, the designer wearer fragrance person. This is going to be more masculine, personal enjoyment. These fragrances are not going to be one you're going to walk down the street, you're going to get 10 people saying, oh my God, you smell bomb. It's just not that style of fragrance unless you're surrounded by 10 people in the fragrance community. Both of them are like that. It's just, that's the way these type of fragrances roll. If any of them is a little bit more mass appealing than the other, Cedar would be that one, especially in the dry down. So HalfETI Cedar, how does it smell? When you first spray it on, it automatically, it's HalfETI Cedar. It's cedar heavy. Unlike Leather, which I'll get to in a little bit, isn't as leathery. HalfETI Cedar is a cedar bomb. It is heavy cedar, and sometimes cedar can come across more like warm and creamy like sandalwood, but in this case it doesn't really come off like that until you get further into the dry down. It's more of like a darker masculine woods in the opening, mixed together with this kind of almost green, warm and spicy cardamom with a slight tinge of sweetness that you get from like a saffron or something. I remember somebody putting the notes as I was running through them during my live stream. But the saffron in this provides, I mean, this is not a sweet fragrance, but there's a slight bit of that sweet and spiciness you get from saffron. As that starts to wane and you start getting other spices rolling into there, there's a slight, almost boozy and fruity tone that comes in here. I'm not sure if there's booze in this fragrance, but it comes across like almost like, again, mostly woody, but it has a little bit of spice, a little bit of this warmth, and then you also have a slight tinge of freshness mixed together with almost a little bit of a fruity, boozy tone. But don't get me wrong, again, it's still a very masculine, woody fragrance at its core. So if you don't like heavy woods, you won't like this fragrance. As it starts, so it takes a while to get to the dry down. So the opening, again, has almost a little bit of citrus in there, but it's, again, mostly a woody fragrance for the first like 5 to 10 minutes. As you start to get further into the fragrance, as that woods starts to get a little bit less dark, as the spices start to creep down, because it's more spice and woods in the opening, you get a little bit more of that fruitiness that's coming through. Not sure what it's from. It almost smells kind of like, not necessarily Maninka, but like almost like a fig or something like that. Dates, maybe. Like a dried fruits or something like that. That's kind of what it comes across. As you work your way further into the dry down, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour. The woods is still going to be heavy, but that's whenever the woods kind of lighten up a bit. And then you get a little bit of this almost vanillic amber coming in. Again, it still never gets too sweet. It just gets a little bit more of this kind of almost creaminess mixed together with the woods, and that is where this fragrance really hits its stride. That's where it almost gets a little bit more mass appealing, and you're left with, almost at the end of the day, a slight fruity, warm, spicy, woody fragrance that has a nice, almost vanillic tonka mixture underneath it. And it's very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful, to the point where I'd say I'd give this fragrance about an 8.5. I think that it's one that you should definitely get your nose on if you haven't already. HALFETI Cedar is definitely a killer, but again, it's not going to be one that's going to be for everybody, so I can understand for the people who don't like it, why you would not like it. I can totally understand that. It's just, it's all based on personal preference. And if you would have asked me a year ago, I might not have liked this fragrance, and I would have gave up on it in the first 5 minutes, because for the first 5 minutes, very woody, very, very spicy. It's just, and it's like that for probably 30 to 35 minutes. But that opening 5 minutes is the most polarizing woods that you can have. But yeah, it's a woody fragrance. It's called HALFETI Cedar. Obviously, it's woody, but it's very good, and it's definitely not linear. It is a tale of two fragrances from the opening to the dry down. Definitely give it a shot, and also make sure that you wait till it dries down. So, let's see. HalfETI Leather. I already sprayed it on. I don't know, but this is the decant. It's Penhaligons HALFETI Leather. And you only need like 2 to 3 sprays of both of these. You don't need much more than that. Both of them are heavy projectors. I'll just get that out of the way. They're about above average for the first 2 to 3 hours. So again, when you have heavy woods, you have heavy spices, you have a little bit of a smoky nuance to this as well, just an FYI. The smoky nuance is a little bit more prominent in the leather, but they push out above average for about 2 to 3 hours. Then it's more of a moderate scent for both of them. I would say that cedar is a little bit longer for the opening projection. I would say that's more about 3 to 4 hours, and they both last about 10 hours. They're pretty decent projectors. If not, leather might be about 8 to 9. But with that said, we're getting into HalfETI Leather now. So HalfETI Leather. So I really like the opening. It's kind of like a tale of two different fragrances here. So we had HalfETI Cedar, where I like the dry down more than the opening, even though I like both parts. This one, it has this kind of, you know, guy, I'm a sucker for plum, And there is a nice warm and spicy plum to this. Even though this fragrance has a little bit of freshness, a little bit more than the cedar does, I would say both of these are transitional season fragrances. They're really good in the spring and fall, but you'd be okay in the winter. I wouldn't wear either of these in hot summer days. They just wouldn't work out. So when you first spray it on, you have this kind of plum and citrus mixture with a slight touch of leather. So I was actually expecting this to be kind of like a ombre leather, Ganymede, Godolphin style like leather, where it's a really front and center leather. The leather in this is kind of more along the lines of orchid leather by Van Cleef & Arpels, where the leather is kind of like a softer leather that's underneath other things throughout the fragrance, and it becomes more prominent as you get to the dry down, but it still isn't even more than like 25% of the fragrance at any point in time. In the opening, it's like a warm and spicy fruitiness that you get with this plum, a little bit of a citrus mixture. You also get a little bit of a fresh spiciness to it. As you work your way into the mid, you get a slight floral tone that creeps its way in and then creeps its way out just as quickly. And then you have that nice soft dark leather semi-suede that is really beautiful. As you work your way further into the dry down, that's where this fragrance kind of becomes a little bit dull for me. It still smells really like it's okay, but I remember during the live stream I was really happy with it. I gave it a 9 for the opening. I said it smelled like orchid leather, but as it dried, it just became a little bit more dull. The fruitiness kind of goes away with the mix with that citrus. It becomes more, you get like an oudiness into it and a slight animalic tone. But it's more of like just a woody, smoky, but dull fragrance that has a slight bit of sweetness underneath it and then some spice on top. And then you have a slight bit of this leather mixed in. But the oud comes across as like a designer oud. At times, I know I said animalic, it's the way that it came across, and I was smelling a bunch of different things at that time. But I noticed the next time that I wore it, it's only for like a 5-minute period, so I wouldn't really take this fragrance as an animalic fragrance whatsoever. It's more of a, again, opening fruity citrus, but not like a heavy zesty citrus, kind of just a fruit citrus blend. Mixed together with a soft leather. It smells like, if you've ever smelled orchid leather, again, it smells like that in the opening. And then you have a unique spicy mixture. There's nutmeg and cumin, with the cumin being the more prominent of the two. And there's a slight dose of cinnamon after about 45 minutes. But again, after about 45 minutes to an hour, you get this, again, it's warm, spicy, but it's just woods, a slight dose of leather, and a little bit of smoky nuance. That's what the fragrance is after that point in time. It's okay. I mean, it's not anything I would wear out in public, but I can see the people who really like those woody, smoky fragrances, then you might like that dry down. It's not like super smoked or anything like that, like an incense suave or any kind of like amouage that I've smelled that has the incense. It's not that heavy, but it's a noticeable incense after about 45 minutes. It's just mixed together with a heavier dose of woods and leather. Yeah, I would give that probably a 9 in the opening, and then after 45 minutes, I'd give it like a 7.8 to an 8. But HalfETI Leather is nice. Is it anything that I would recommend blind buying? No. HalfETI Cedar, if you know you like woody fragrances, this is worth a blind buy. But if I was you, I would just pick up a decan of both, and you'd be fine with either one. Again, for me, HalfETI Cedar, they both have a same HalfETI DNA. If any of them, if you try the original HalfETI, HalfETI Leather has a more of a prominence of that original HalfETI. They both do, because it's kind of like that woody, smoky nuance. But if anything, the HalfETI Cedar is the better of the two. A little bit more mass appealing in the dry down. It's just more wearable. I love the fragrance. HalfETI Cedar is a great fragrance and a great release of last year. So thank you to Newt. Thank you to D Holmes. Let me know what you think about these two fragrances. And again, I'll be back with another one. Thank you guys so much. Peace out.